In the spring of 1989, I was eligible to retire from teaching. My husband had already retired, and he really wanted me to retire. But I loved what I was doing, and I couldn't decide. And I had said to myself, like Dolly Levi, send me a sign. I don't know what to do. And so one day in late spring, I got home, and my husband said, a man called you today about a job, and if you're interested, his phone number's on the refrigerator. And so I called. It was Jim Conley. He was one of the sales representatives for the state of Kentucky. And he came to Bardstown and took us out to dinner and explained what he needed. It was time for Kentucky to adopt music books. They did that about every 5 to 6 years. And they had full-time consultants who worked with the sales representatives, but none of them were proficient in music. And
just to clarify, you're talking about public schools,
mm-hmm.
textbooks for the public schools.
Mm-hmm. I was interested in the job. He said it would be for 2 years. The first year, I would go with him and show the new books and do some exercises from the books with the teachers, showing them how they could use the books, how they were organized, and some of the song material that was in the books. The second year, I would hold workshops, introducing them to materials so that when the school year started, they'd already have some things under their belt ready to go. And so that seemed enough like teaching that I was interested. And so I turned in my retirement papers, and that summer I began to work. And so that I did not work full time in the summer of 1989. And so I began to work the state of Kentucky, and I also worked with Jim Wasaba, who had the western part of the state. So I worked with those two men, and they coordinated with each other, and I stayed pretty busy. And the second year I did workshops, and I really enjoyed what I was doing. And then the next year, West Virginia was looking for music books, and they didn't have anybody. And so they sent me to West Virginia, and I worked there for 2 years. First year presenting, second year doing workshops. Then Georgia was up for adoption, so my 2-year work expanded. And then I ended up working also in Virginia, North Carolina, Indiana, southern Indiana only. I worked in Alabama and Mississippi. And even one time they were short of people, and they sent me to Long Beach, California for a convention. So I had a great deal of fun. I met a lot of people. And then West Virginia decided that they didn't have anybody that could do health. So I did some health in West Virginia, and then the Kentucky guy said, well, if you're going to do other subjects, we'll just use you here. And so I ended up doing social studies and English and health. And then music came around again, and I was still working, and then music came around again. So I continued working with them until 2007. Toward the end, it was not always really pleasant. One time I went down to Tennessee, and the teachers were all angry about some policies in their program, and they had, in music, there's usually one teacher in each school, and so they didn't have a chance to get together and complain, and they brought them all in for me to do a workshop, and it was the first time they had seen each other, and all they wanted to do was complain, and so it was not a very happy day that day. And a year later, they asked me to go back to the same place, and I declined. So that was one nice thing about not working full time. I could decline. I rarely did. In fact, one time we were on vacation at the beach, and I flew from there up somewhere to Virginia and did a workshop while I was on vacation, because I really did enjoy it, what I was doing. It was just a lot like teaching, except the students were teachers. Because I had to be prepared, they sent a lot of equipment and materials to my home. And as it ran out and we adopted new things, I was left with all this stuff. And so I was able to donate. I knew that teachers often, their teachers' manuals get lost or destroyed, they get worn out. And so I offered a lot of materials to the Nelson County music teachers in Kentucky, where I lived at that time. And also the Catholic school that was in my neighborhood had no music things at all. And so I was able to donate some things there. There was a young friend who was just beginning her teaching, and I had some materials, and she went into a school that did not have a lot of things. And so I was able to give her some materials to ease her job a little bit. So that was another benefit. And also, I had a lot of recordings, and a lot of times the school districts did not have the money to buy the recordings. And so I was able to donate the CDs, and we also had musical maps and things, other materials that I was able to give to the music teachers that I knew. I ended up working 18 years for a job that was only hired for 2. I flew a lot. After I was working in Kentucky, I always drove. But in the other states, I flew, and they let me keep my frequent flyer miles, although they paid for the tickets. And so it enabled me to take some trips on MacMillan McGraw Hill. So all in all, it was a very pleasant second career. It was enough like teaching that I still enjoyed doing it very much. And most of the places, the teachers were very receptive to what I had to say and offer. So I went through 3 different music book adoptions in Kentucky, and generally loved every minute of it. I enjoyed the travel and the people I met, and I went back to West Virginia enough that I felt like I had good friends there.